This video is not for whales and dolphins, it's for you because you are just like me. Average Duck Gamer here, and today I want to talk about the dev talk. Okay, so what I want to talk about specifically though is I do want to talk about Yi Xuan, and I want to talk about the P word, and then we're also going to talk about some other bits and bobs as well. But like the main things I want to talk about is Yi Xuan, and should you be prepping right now for Yi Xuan? And the answer is no. Because you might be thinking to yourself, oh wow, like she's going to be coming around and she's going to be coming out in 2.0 and I need to be prepped for that, which means I can't pull anyone in 1.7. And I would just pump the brakes on that idea and just say you'll probably be fine. A, you'll probably be fine even if she is in 2.0, but B, they're going to build her up. Just in terms of context, if we think about the way that 1.0 worked, they could have launched with this crazy OP character in 1.0, but they didn't. They launched with good characters in 1.0 by all means, but they didn't launch with, Miyabi in 1.0 because they wanted to build up that hype. They wanted to get you into the world. They wanted to get you experiencing Zenless Zone Zero. And then they wanted to be like, oh, hey, this character that you've seen quite a few times, they're super powerful. Now you can pull for her. Isn't that going to be awesome? And then she's in all the story stuff. And, that's how they build up the hype for her. So I think that we're likely to see that. I don't think it necessarily means that we're going to be waiting until 2.4 like we were with Miyabi, but what I do think is that we'll probably be waiting until 2.2, maybe 2.3, before we actually see Yi Xuan as a limited S-rank character for us to pull. Now, I could be wrong. This is all guesswork at the end of the day, but I think if they want to create similar hype as they did with Miyabi, they are going to need to lay some groundwork for that, and then they're going to need to deliver on that. And what I'm most looking forward to is some super cool cutscenes with this super cool new character. Now, do we think that Yi Xuan is going to be the Void Hunter for the episode 2 of Zenless Zone Zero? Maybe. Yeah. Potentially. Yeah. Does it really matter? No. I think if they build her up enough and they tell us that she's super powerful, and guys, she's got wings, man. I mean, how is she not going to be awesome? Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter who's a Void Hunter and who's not. Void Hunter is a title that is earned. So it might be that she might not be a Void Hunter at the start of the story, but maybe she is by the time we're able to pull for her. Or maybe she is a Void Hunter full stop. Who knows? We'll find out very soon, I'm sure. I think it's going to be hard for them to build up and create that similar hype that we have with Miyabi, because with Miyabi, they were able to build up some hype for Miyabi pre-release because they had beta tests. They were able to drop a lot of lore stuff pre the game release, which was able to drum up some of that hype. Whereas now we're in the game, it's probably going to be a bit tougher to build up the hype for Yi Xuan, so it's probably going to feel a little less hype than Miyabi for sure, but I think they are going to try and build it up, which means that we're probably not going to see her until 2.2, 2.3, maybe 2.4, we'll see. Again, I could be wrong, but I think they would be kind of silly to do that. Plus, they did also tell us that we're going to be seeing more Oval Squad. We're going to be seeing the Angels of Delusion in the episode 2. So it makes sense to me that we probably see some of those first. Not necessarily completing those factions, but we see some of those factions first before we move on to Yi Xuan's faction. Which kind of brings me to the point of her faction might indicate who she works well with. So very much like a not whales and dolphins thing, but if we look back at episode 1, with Miyabi, there was a lot of people saving for Miyabi that probably skipped out on some of the best potential supports for Miyabi because they were saving for Miyabi. And I guess what I want to say is when we start seeing other members of Yi Xuan's faction, it might be a really good idea to consider picking up some of those characters, especially if they seem like they might work well with Yi Xuan, if that is a character that you do want to pull for. I know I'm kind of going off the deep end here and immediately being very excited about this new character, but we're gacha game players after all. That's kind of what we're supposed to do. But the kind of point that I'm getting at is that before Miyabi came out, it wasn't totally clear how good Yanagi was going to be with Miyabi. I mean, Yanagi, when she released, was the best DPS in the game. But for a lot of players who might have been saving for the Void Hunter, saving for Miyabi, it might not have made sense in that moment to pick up Yanagi. But within factions, most factions have some innate synergy. So it wouldn't be a crazy idea to just consider, at the very least, the characters that are in the same faction as Yi Xuan when that kind of comes around. Also, what I want to say, and this is more of a hope and a dream, is that I really hope that Yi Xuan is not a DPS. I hope that she does something else. I hope that she's different. I hope that maybe she's a a defense character or a support character or just something that isn't a DPS, but I'm probably wrong about that. That is a prayer, but we'll see. I mean, she does look like a powerful being from the imagery that we have so far, so I could be completely wrong about that one. Definitely, absolutely, and that would be fine. Okay, then let's talk about the P word. Okay, power creep. Now, they said that they want characters to have long-term value and they will consider supplementing and reworking skills, and they do not want to necessarily mindlessly beef up stats, which is great. Now, while they were talking about this, they showed Lost Void, so I think that could be an indication that maybe we're going to get Lost Void stuff outside of the Void, potentially. But what I think that they were saying is that they have the intention to do those things should things feel that they really need that buff. Should characters really need that buff in order to continue to clear in-game content. The fact, though, that we're talking about power creep in a gacha game that isn't even at the end of its episode 1 is a little concerning, but at the same time, it feels as though the dev team are open enough to talk about it and say, hey, put their hands up and kind of say, okay, maybe, you know, Ellen might need a little bit of support here. And to be clear, they're not specifically calling out any characters or anything like that, but it would be nice to see them say, okay, right, so maybe if we did this, would Ellen feel a little bit better? Maybe if we did that, would Ellen maybe feel a little bit better? And the idea that they could do those things without just like buffing up the numbers feels like they care about the characters and the world that they're creating. And that feels pretty great to me, I'm not gonna lie. And I guess the last thing I really want to touch on is that there are no more agent stories. So agents who come into the game will be in the story, as opposed to there being like a separate agent story, which I understand from like a storytelling perspective is going to make it a more coherent experience. However, I do have some question marks around it because I kind of don't want them to feel like they need to shoehorn specific characters in at specific points in order to make the banner make sense that's going to be on banner at the time that the story goes up. So I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that if it's executed correctly, it could come out looking really cool. But I do have some question marks at this point because I didn't mind the agent story being a separate side thing. That's completely fine. But if we're in a position where we get characters from, say, Obol Squad and then characters from Angels of Delusion, and then we get like another Obol Squad character, you know, kind of like we have got in throughout episode 1. There was one occasion with the Sons of Kaladin where we had like Yanagi in the middle of it, and then we had Caesar and then Jane, for example. So we were flip-flopping between these different factions. And this might be an indication that they're going to run back-to-back characters that work really well together, which is something that I've talked about before. Or it might be an indication that they're going to shoehorn those characters into the story when they weren't necessarily supposed to be there. Now, in theory, before they said this, they probably had plenty of time in the planning phases to make sure that this does all make sense. So, you know, I'll trust them for now. But I do have some question marks, and I hope it's implemented well. And one more thing, which is wise English. Can we just appreciate how hard that guy crushed it? Yo, yeah, tuning into it and expecting to read the subtitles and having him just talk me through it was awesome. The guy absolutely crushed it. But anyway, that's enough out of me. I guess the main thing was Yi Xuan's coming. Don't stress about it. She probably won't be in 2.0, would be my guess. And you'll probably have plenty of time to prep, but watch out for her faction teammates. Those would be the things that I would be thinking about. Okay, as always, remember to like and subscribe for better average luck on all your pools. You can follow me over on Twitch for live streams. I love yapping about this kind of stuff. Join the Discord, pool responsibly, stay weird. Bye, 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 bye.